Hello, it is Amy. I am back at it again, and this is my first time having a panel to talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I'm very excited. So, yes, I have Christina, Steven, and Yogi with me today. I like to do my plugs up front. So, the next Avatar: Last Airbender thing I have coming is going to be another one of the nations. I haven't decided yet, and I'm going to start doing character studies. It's either going to be Zuko or Iroh first, and I cannot decide. Maybe I'll put it up to Twitter. I'll poll you guys. I love that, and I'll figure that out. But that's what I have upcoming for that, and I have more Song of Ice and Fire and His Dark Materials things coming up. But I will leave it there. Yogi, what do you got going on over at All Through the Moon Door?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel slash podcast called Through the Moon Door. I've been doing lots of episodes so far about Orientalism, Jamie and Cersei's relationship, my favorite minor characters, all that stuff. Sadly, on most of those podcasts, my audio has been corrupted because StreamYard hates me. So I'm currently in the process of trying to fix that. And until I have it fixed, I haven't really planned ahead on doing other episodes. I have a couple of ideas floating around, but sadly, I don't really have anything to announce. But the idea that I like the most that I'm probably going to do is I'll have Kelly, aka Jaded Redhead, on to talk about ships in A Song of Ice and Fire. Ship related ASWAF
Boatsy
content.
boats. That's her thing.
Yes. The episode's going to be called Ships for Brains. And that's all I know about it so far. And tomorrow on Valentine's Day, I will release the audio version of the live stream that I did with Rohan about Jamie and Cersei's relationship. I did that last Sunday, but I will release it as a podcast tomorrow on the 14th of February, 2021.
Wow, how
That's it. That's all I
romantic.
got.
Yeah, and Rohan has been on my channel to talk about Cersei. We did a whole episode, but it's exciting that Yogi got to have her on to talk about a specific relationship. And I will have
Yeah.
Yogi on next month for my fourth episode of Buddy Banter. I just released my third episode with Low the Links, and we had a really good time. I always love having them on the channel. They have become a regular, so we had a really good time. So, Steven, tell us about Here Be Dragons.
I wasn't ready to unmute. You got to me too quick. Hi, I'm Steven Stark. I am the host of Here Be Dragons. Over there, we live stream once a week, every Sunday afternoon at 6 p.m. Eastern. And we cover all kinds of nerdy topics. We've done a lot of stuff for The Expanse, talked a little Star Wars, a little Star Trek. Yeah. Just you never know what we're going to be talking about one week to the next. I do have a series called I Know That Nerd, and I have actually known, that nerd and that nerd on that series. They've both been guests of mine. Specifically, tomorrow, Valentine's Day, as of the recording of this, we will be talking about the best romantic relationship on television right now, and that is WandaVision. The love between those two is fantastic. Weird show. I hope you can join us for that tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. And the week after that, I'm going to be having Nessie, the questing beast, as the nerd I get to know a little better. Now, this is a lady I know pretty well. She's a co-host of mine. We hung out at the con a couple years, and yeah, we're just going to have a blast getting to having a nice long conversation between two friends.
That is so exciting, and everyone check out Nessie's channel, The Unspun Yarn. We have over there. I co-host a series we have called "Bleep the Patriarchy, Bleep It Y'all," where we do some sweet, sweet feminist analysis. She also does the Magical Menagerie, where she covers all sorts of mystical beasts. She has like a 4-parter on dragons, and I'm going to be on there this month to talk about the Phoenix. So we're going to have a really good time. And she's also been doing some Arthurian legend coverage. So please check her out. She talks all things mythology, pop culture, and lore. Lots of fun. So Christina, also known as Lady Triple, anything you got coming up?
You know what? Every single time I do one of these, I don't, and then something happens. But please, I do have a group of friends, and we do filk and parody music, mostly to a SWAF, but hopefully building out from that eventually. But we're called Lip Bringers, and we have a channel on YouTube. We did a Christmas special called Merry Litmas. And we had a really fun time, and I wish I could have plugged that. But hey, if you're still feeling in the spirit of Christmas, go check it out.
It's worth your time. There's some great singing. Steven and his two co-hosts and I, we recorded a little holiday message that's in there. A couple of other, like I know, is it Aswaf Ninja? Is that his name?
Oh
Something
wait,
Ninja.
or Citadel or
I can't remember. There are other content creators on there, so check
yes.
that out. So yeah, I'll have the links to Here Be Dragons, Through the Moon Door, and Lip Bringers in the description, so you can consume content to your delight. So yes, I'm very excited to have my first panel about Avatar: Last Airbender, and I did a poll, as I am wont to do, and I asked Twitter, those who follow me at least, which nation they wanted me to do first, and they picked the Air Nation. So that is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about airbending, Air Nation culture, and airbending characters. So let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about kind of the maybe we should actually, I wanted to start with at first with Air Nation culture, but maybe we should start about the origins of airbending, and specifically I want to talk about the air bison, which Christina has a little shirt that kind of goes with this theme. But yeah, so what do we think about the kind of the lore? Yay, there it is. It's so cute. Yay. I love this show and tell we've got going on. So how do we see every nation basically has a kind of founding animal, right? We have the dragon for fire, the badger moles for earth. But what do we think about the air bison in Air Nation culture and airbending?
Well, I do love that that the tattoos that they get, the airbending masters, match the sky bison with the arrows. I think that's a good kind of honor to them. But seeing them as the original source of airbending is, I don't know, it's always interesting with how I was having this talk earlier about how we know through Korra that the lion turtles are the ones that give the bending.
Yeah.
But the sky bison are the masters of it. So they're the ones who teach the humans the mastery, right? I like that connection. And I mean, it seems that they are the masters because they are all capable of flight, right? Which is something only 2 airbenders can do.
Yeah, and they also use their tail to whip wind. And I also kind of think of, in the timeline, at least Aang's timeline, the lion turtles have kind of been forgotten about. So I think that it's been myth changes over time. But I think he does mention that that's how that the airbending monks learned the technique, right? So the bison were the teachers, basically.
Yeah. The funny thing about Appa for me is when I was watching Last Airbender as a kid for the first time, I never questioned how he could fly. Like for some reason, it never really clicked with me that he's an airbender until like I either rewatched it or it was a line in the show, but I just never really. That's just being a kid, I guess. I just didn't question this giant wingless bison. What is it? Like? I mean, most of the animals in Avatar are like combinations of 2 separate animals.
Yes.
What is it? Is it a beaver and a bison?
No, it's definitely a bison and a hot air balloon.
Yeah, and actually they make a joke about that, I believe, in season 2, whenever they're like, oh, the Earth King's bear. And they're like, you mean platypus bear? Like, no. And they're like, you mean something else bear? And they're like, no. And they're just a bear. And they're like, that's weird.
But the thing about that, though, if you think that through to its logical end conclusion, is that they know what a platypus is. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to call it a platypus bear. But where are all the platypi?
Where are those platypi?
Why do they refer to each animal as a combination of things if there's not the original versions of it anywhere?
I like your thinking, Yogi.
Well, that's a lot.
We got it. That's a whole different
And
topic.
Next episode will be about animals.
That's the last Airbender zoology. We have to ask that guy who got stuck in the owl library. He probably
Oh
could
my
give us some
god.
answers.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, there are a few examples of single animals. And you mentioning the library reminds me that Wan Shitong's servants were foxes, just foxes. But you're right, most of them are crossovers. But the sky bison is not one, or the air bison. And I didn't watch this show until I was well and truly an adult. I was introduced to it through my kids. And I don't know that I ever really questioned how he could fly either. You know, it's very clear very early on. This is a fantasy world, and I've been consuming fantasy my whole life. So, you know, internal helium sacs is my explanation, and it's as good as any as I need. And then they've got that, as you say, almost kind of beaver tail with.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well,
he manipulates the air currents with his tail and his 6 feet, which I just love. Whenever they make him walk, it's so funny. Like in season 3, when they're actually, my favorite episode of season 3 is the dance party episode in the cave, and they're like, "Okay, Appa, go ahead and go in the back," and he like shuffles with his 6 feet, and it's so freaking cute.
Yeah,
I love
in a
that
way,
so much.
it just shows that the air bisons.
Flameo Hotman, of course, that's my favorite. Love that episode.
The Footloose episode.
The Footloose episode.
You are aware that is the same season that contains the finale and also the Day of the Black Sun.
It doesn't do anything for the plot, but it's just fun, and it shows how repressed the Fire Nation kids are.
Okay.
And I love the part where they like do the Fire Nation pledge, and he's like, blah blah, Fire Lord, fire bending. It's great.
I also like Ozai made of noodles.
I know that season 3 is your favorite, Steven, so I'm sure that you have lots of opinions.
Yeah, but I think we'll
do a whole season 3 episode with just you, Steven.
Yeah, Appa being able to fly, though, it just shows that the air bisons, just like the dragons are the masters of firebending, the air bisons have mastered airbending, because it's like the highest form of airbending is being able to hover and fly, like Zahir does in Legend of Korra. So it does make sense if they're the original, the true masters, the airbending masters.
Now I'm sitting there, I just like to pick things apart, so now I'm like, could the badger moose do metal bending, or is that...
That would be metal.
Yes.
Yeah. The thing with that is
be like...
Yeah, the thing with that is metal bending the like purest form of earth bending, the way that hovering is for air bending, or is it just a new thing that it was invented? But then what is the purest form?
It's a sub bending, I suppose.
Yeah, there's like lava. Is it like lava bending?
Yeah,
there's
really just like lightning bending is a sub, it's like another branch of fire bending. I don't think the dragons were like shooting things down with lightning.
Well, also that actually, so there's a huge connection between airbenders and the spirit world and spirituality. So it's like, I wonder about the spirituality and like how connected the sky bison are to the spirit world. I don't know if I know any examples of them like traveling to it or in the spirit world itself, if there are air bison or sky bison, excuse me. But that would be kind of interesting because, gosh, it's like, I definitely know spirituality is so important to the air culture because all of their offspring are benders. It's not like earth benders where, you might be a bender, you might not. Like if you're back before they were wiped out, all of everybody who was born, and there's this whole, gosh, I have a lot of questions about what was going on with the 2 temples are female and then the 2 temples are male. So I'm like, how are you reproducing? Oh, you have a festival every year and you get together and then
sexy.
The women are pregnant somehow. And then
it's a kid show.
The kids
don't question it.
Yeah. Yeah, the lack of kind of families. And what's interesting, and this is something that I will, when we're done with our discussion, I'm going to read this quick essay that I did about the cultural influences on the Air Nation. And one of them is this monastic culture, specifically Tibetan Buddhist monastic culture. And there is that separation of the sexes. And there is also that idea of detachment from worldly things. And actually, you made me think of something, Christina, which is this idea of the sky and how in classic Chinese thought, there is round heaven and square earth, which is actually, you see the earth nation is round with a square in the middle. That's a Chinese symbol for the heavens and the mortal world. So Tian, meaning sky, actually also means heaven or the spiritual realm. So the fact that the bison can fly actually would make them closer to the gods, technically, if we're talking just mythology.
And, bison are, they're an animal really native to North America, but what they represented to the native peoples of America was a great deal of freedom. And the fact that they are a huge unit that sticks together, but still moves very freely around its environment, not attached to any one place, because they are a migratory herd animal. It's going to be evocative of this idea of the freedom to come and go, or freedom in general, which is going to be an ongoing theme in all of the Air Nation stuff going forward from this point as well. Like this idea of being free to choose your own path, to contemplate all the various paths before you, before say jumping headfirst into something. That's going to be a very common theme to every aspect of Airbender: the cultures, the character, the sky bison themselves. This idea that they're very free. And I was having this thought earlier, if I might just continue a tangential point a little bit. Y'all mostly know I'm a D&D guy. I'm gonna look at every piece of media I consume through that D&D filter, and this idea of absolute freedom, you would think might be a very chaotic thing, but I actually think the opposite might be true, because the air nomads have a pretty strict set of rules that they live by and adhere to about their nonviolence, about their vegetarian lifestyle. As you say, the separation of men and women. It's for a society to be free, they actually have a whole lot of rules, at which we can have a whole conversation about the dichotomy of freedom and law. But I do find the Air Nation to be really kind of a gold mine for thinking about the philosophies of freedom. And it plays out really well for being on a kid's show.
Yeah, and I think especially when we get to hear when we see him kind of misinterpreting this idea of freedom, and he reads it as anarchy. And I think that's kind of interesting to see play out. And I was a teenager adult when I saw Korra, but I was a kid when I saw Last Airbender, and it was interesting kind of to see that they realized after Last Airbender that there were these big themes that they could introduce to kids. I mean, genocide is literally in Avatar: Last Airbender. So what they were able to do with Korra was kind of interesting, because there's kind of this steampunk feel. So there are a lot more kind of political, more modern, perhaps even Marxist kind of things going on that were interesting. Sorry, Yogi, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I just wanted to say I really liked Stephen's point about the bisons and the connection to the Native Americans, because I wonder if that was like a conscious choice when they were thinking about what kind of animal to give the air nomads, because it did seem kind of random. Like bisons have nothing to do with air, whereas you could see why a mole would be an inspiration for the earthbenders, or a dragon for the firebenders, and the moon, I guess, for the waterbenders.
I think technically I guess it is. Yeah,
the moon was the first waterbender, I guess.
Yeah.
But even though it's technically the sun and the moon who cause tides, but let's not get bogged down in that detail. And
save that for the water tribe video.
It's more so like the spirit that is represented by the moon, more so than the actual moon itself, I think. But that's But like, okay, why a bison? Couldn't you have gone with like birds or anything, any more like obvious choice? And maybe that was because of the idea that the air nomads are these nomadic people who were like the victims of a genocide. And a lot of the elements of sort of their culture, maybe that's where they got the idea from, to make it a bison, because they wanted to have that connection.
I also think it's interesting that they connect with one airbender, and that it seems a little bit contradictory to the freedom, right? To like kind of be in service to your airbender person and connect with them. And I know that happened in the training, like you got a sky bison and I think it ended up changing, whereas like they gave you a sky bison, but then, or the sky bison chose you versus you choosing your sky bison. I know Aang chose Appa, but
then whenever you have the daughter of Lin's sister, who I can't remember, Suin, yeah, Suin Beifong, right? Her daughter becomes an airbender in the last season of Korra, and has that like air bison that's all boogery, and she's like, you don't choose your air bison. So it's like, wait, what?
I think they ended up changing it when I was doing my research, but also they have this connection. And then, so in the Kyoshi novels, it's interesting because you can, I'm trying not to spoil too much. You should really read them though. Everyone should read them. They're amazing. But something that was really interesting was, I won't spoil too much, but in the Airbender passed and had a sky bison, and they, you know, when you pass away, your sky bison, you know, generally like just goes back out into the wild and like joins a herd. And but this particular sky bison chose to stay with Kyoshi and help Kyoshi because they knew it was what their master wanted. And so this sky bison helped Kyoshi and then eventually was like, okay, I helped you. I think I'm good now. Like, peace. I'm gonna go, you know, join a herd and retire. But it is interesting that they have some sort of like loyalty to their airbender, and then, you know, will help their friends. Like, you know, Appa would help, you know, would give you know, someone else a ride.
Yeah, Sokka and
Aang wasn't
Katara
there.
could like
Yeah.
jump on it and be like, and he'd be like,
Yeah.
okay.
Sokka and Katara could ride Appa into battle.
Yeah. Appa really trusted Katara.
Yeah. So it's like they definitely know, like, oh, okay, you're Aang's friend. You can, you know, I'll get. It's not like they can troll them that much, but it is interesting when you think about the concept of freedom of like them developing bonds with airbenders like that, and then, you know, kind of staying in their service. But it seems like a true love and loyalty inspired by that. So that's cool.
They also remember people that they've only met once. Remember in season 3, Zuko said, hey, I let your air bison go. And they're like, we don't believe you. And then Appa licked him.
Yeah.
So I think they also kind of have a sense of goodness in people. Kind of a little bit like dogs. They kind of know when someone is not a good person. Unless there are some really clueless dogs out there. But I've had some dogs that would growl. Like I had one dog that was the sweetest dog, and then he growled at this one guy, and I was like, dude, what's up? And then the guy opened his mouth and he was a total asshole. So I was like, all right. Like, so there's kind of this sense from the bison about the goodness or lack thereof in people. But I think that something that's also interesting, you know, Stephen has made the point about the associations with freedom and nomad culture. I also kind of like the playfulness as well of the Air Nation culture with the games. They have Airball, they have these air scooters, you know, races. And you know, you have Monkeyatsu. They use airbending to make the pies fly and you know, land on other monks' heads who are meditating, right? So there is this seriousness for sure with the meditation, with the observance of you know, detachment and nonviolence and vegetarianism, but they're not boring and unhappy. They actually have quite a bit of playfulness to them.
And in my opinion, that's the I've been reading a lot about I've been getting really into the spiritual aspect of yoga lately, but you know, it's still about, you can have fun. It's about the non-violence, like non-harm, right? You can having that freedom of expression as long as you are not harming people, and that's kind of a fun thing. I mean, you have heard about, and there are a lot of examples of the air nomads kind of canceling people, and I hate to say canceling people because it's not
You mean
the best term to throw around right now.
They shun them like the Jehovah's Witnesses.
They do though. So one example was Sang, who was Kurik's, one of Avatar Kurik's team Avatar. So Sang was an airbender, and after Kurik died, there was a lot of unrest in the world, especially because they could not locate the new Avatar. And so there was a lot of unrest that, you know, his team Avatar was like, we've got to, you know, clean up. And there was this pirate fleet that was like doing bad stuff, and Sang, Airbender Sang. Sorry, I'm gonna even like Kurik, Sang, waterbending, airbending. No, so Sang, like, you did the wave thing and destroyed them. He killed a bunch of people, and he was shunned from the air nomads after that. And then they couldn't find the Avatar, and he also stole the toys he stole the toys from the air temple to help the Earth Nation find the next Avatar.
And that,
yes, he was
that
shunned.
idea of choosing the toys based on past lives is actually how they choose the Dalai Lama traditionally in Tibet. So there are a lot of Hindu, Buddhist, and Tibetan kind of all together kind of influences going on. Yeah, that they do have a bit of, it sounds like they have kind of accountability built into their culture as well. It's not just, you know, do what you want. Obviously, they do have vows and principles that they have to do. And I also think we see with, for example, Zahir, we see how airbending can be used very violently. He literally creates an air vacuum around them and literally chokes them to death, takes the air out of them. So it can be just as dangerous of an element as fire. It's just that they have come to be a peaceful person. And also, if you notice in Korra, they have, you mentioned the tattoos earlier, Christina. They had different tattoos in the very original airbenders, and so it looked like people or something. I'm not quite sure how you would call it, but the arrow was a kind of later, if you will, development, which I found interesting, is that they have evolved. They're not exactly the same as they were, and even though they're called nomads, you know, they have settled down in temples by the timeline.
I think their whole thing was they have the culture, like, you can live in our way, and I guess you technically can like defect, but you can't come back. They'll like disown you if you're not kind of following their way. But actually Kyoshi's mom was an airbender who defected, and she had a sky bison, and she became like a thief, and they were called the Flying Opera Company. And so she had a sky bison, and she married an earthbender, and then they married or got with a earthbender, and then they had Kyoshi. But that's the thing, I think if you're in the culture, then you're having airbender kids, and you're not, like, if you defect and like go and have a family and not live by the air nomad laws, then you're probably not going to have an airbending child. Which is, all of that is so interesting to me, like how Aang had one airbending kid, one waterbending kid, and then one non-bender who became an airbender later, which was really, that whole thing, I still don't understand. And I don't know if anybody has any theories on this, but like, how did you, is it just completely random who got the airbending after the harmonic convergence? Or, you know, for me, it makes sense with Zahir because he was really spiritual that he got it. You know, Bumi is really spiritual. Bumi is more spiritual than Tenzin, Boomy has a better spiritual connection with the spirit world and the spirits. Like he has a little like Boomju spirit that he talks to and stuff. Whereas Tenzin is actually disconnected from the spirit world. So to me, I'm like, oh, that makes sense how Boomy got it. But then when you think about the air acolytes, like I didn't hear about any air acolytes getting airbending. Right? I don't know. This is maybe it's just too much.
No, and we were going to talk about the resurgence of the Air Nation and how that happened, and kind of how that played out in the show. But I think we should actually talk about the genocide first, and then talk about the resurgence. So we do have this. To me, the Fire Nation, and I'll obviously talk about this more in depth in the episode I do on the Fire Nation, but they really represent this colonialist, imperialist kind of invasion, uh, you know, aggression. Uh, that's really what they represent. And they go for the Air Nation, and some of it is because that's where the new Avatar will come, but it is also because they are a nonviolent an entity, right? In my favorite episode of season 3, when Aang is in the Fire Nation school, they ask, "Oh, when did they fight with the Air Nation army?" And he says the Air Nation had no army. So it was also they were unfortunately an easy target because of their nonviolence. So kind of what I think maybe something we can also talk about is the imbalance that created, because the four elements are supposed to be balanced, and yet a whole nation was wiped out. So, kind of what did that do in the timeline that we first get whenever Aang emerges from the ice, and it's been 100 years since anyone has seen an airbender? Kind of how does that affect the overall world?
Well, it's very clear to me, at least, that this one of the central ideas of the original show, Avatar: The Last Airbender, was the idea about multiculturalism and the value of having perspectives from outside your own, which is why Team Avatar is made up from people of all the different nations, benders and non-benders. It's why Republic City is the way it is in The Legend of Korra. I think that is the death of one of those nations and seeing how out of balance it has created the world is I think is the backdrop by which the rest of the series, praising multiculturalism, that's the canvas it's painted on. Where they think about what they've lost, where we see, I don't know, this is a complicated idea that I'm not sure I have the words for right off the top of my head, but it is interesting that in a show where children is the target demographic, that in the third episode of the whole dang show, they talk about the death of an entire race of people. And it may have started just as an excuse to have that conversation with children. Hindsight's 2020, and a good writer will look at all the stuff from Avatar: The Last Airbender and then go on to write Korra and grow on the concepts that they've already built into it. So I'm not sure how deep they thought about the implications of that as they were writing it originally. Deep to some extent, because obviously it comes off fantastically. But I think maybe it did start really as an excuse to have that conversation about multiculturalism by examining what's lost when we lost Aang, and we see what the world has lost through his memories and his recollections of the people he knew, Monkey Otso, and there are a couple of characters like Boomy who remember that far back. I'm not sure what else to say about it. Sorry.
No, I like that. I also like this idea of tying it to multiculturalism, and that when you suppress a culture like that, everyone suffers. And in the essay I'm going to read at the end of this episode, I do talk about the Tibetan influences on the Air Nation, and unfortunately, there is a real world example of that in the Tibetans, of having their religious and cultural heritage being suppressed, so much so that their religious leader cannot live in China. So it's I think it's a way for the show writers to present real world problems and issues and tragedies to children. And like, like Steven said in the third episode, we literally get a desolate temple where we know, they do show Gyatso's skeleton. And I remember seeing that as I was probably 10 or so. I would have been a little older, 11 or 12, and that really surprised me because you didn't usually see that in animated series. And so it left a deep impact on me, and I think is one of the many reasons that I feel very strongly about these issues of making sure that all cultures continue and to have their own place in the world.
Yeah, and I think another interesting thing about the point of multiculturalism is that the Air Nation is a lot less well, they're not the Air Nation, they're the Air Nomads. That's one thing. Like the Fire Nation is called the Fire Nation, and the Earth Kingdom is called the Earth Kingdom, and then the Water Tribes are the Water Tribes. So it does make sense for this world where some people are born with this ability that seems to be tied to the region that they're from, that these cultures would evolve or develop a strong sense of nationalism and national identity, which we see especially with the Fire Nation, who is the most imperialist of all the different regions. But the Air Nomads don't really have that. It's mentioned a lot of the times in Avatar: The Last Airbender that Aang had friends from all over the world. He had a friend in the Earth Kingdom, in the Fire Nation, and that's because the Air Nomads, they travel around. They don't settle in one place and live there forever. They're very mobile. They have that freedom, and so they have a lot. They are a lot more multiculturalism and in the way that they expose themselves to more different cultures and people, and they're more open-minded as opposed to a lot of the other nations who just keep to themselves. And I think that may be part of why the Fire Nation, especially, who is very nationalistic and imperialist and colonialist and all that stuff, thought of the Air Nomads as particularly weak. There's that line in the very last, well, second to last episode of the show where Ozai says to Aang that you're weak just like the rest of your people. They did not deserve to exist in this world. And that is, while in the show there is the explanation that Firelord Sozin wiped out the Air Nomads because he didn't want the next Avatar to be born into them. I think a lot of it was also just the fact that they were the biggest sort of counterpoint to this Fire Nation idea of taking people over and imperialism. So, because from a strategic point, like it would have been way better for Sozin to go after the Earth Kingdom. Like if he had just harnessed that comet power to destroy Ba Sing Se, that would have been a huge victory because the Earth Kingdom is really the only power that's holding out over the 100 Years' War against the Fire Nation. And so while the whole thing with the Avatar being from there certainly was a big aspect of it, I think it's just more so just the fact that they are the on the opposite of that spectrum of nationalism and imperialism.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how before Sozin, how in the Kyoshi novels, sorry,
You should just
how
have a
people
shirt that says "in the Kyoshi novels."
yeah, no. So in the Kyoshi novels, but it's true. Actually, it's interesting just to see how the Earth Kingdom idolizes Yang Chen, the previous air Avatar. Like there's statues, they pray to her. She's like, an ideal kind of person. And also the way that when an air nomad visits the Fire Nation, like air nomads are, what is it? They're supposed to be like good luck when you see an air nomad. And like so in the second Kyoshi novel, there's an airbender who is on the sky bison. People are like, oh my gosh, it's an airbender, like, bless my crops and all of that. And they're seen as good luck. But after Sozin, wipes them out, it's the propaganda happens afterwards that no, they were, you know, there was an air army. No, there wasn't. And also, yeah, they're not like good luck charms anymore, which is interesting to see like how that kind of shifted a lot.
Yeah, I think kind of where what I'm sensing from the panel is that it is too simplistic to say that Sozin just was after the Avatar. I think also kind of to all of your points, the Fire Nation also feared the inspiration that these air nomads represented and the kind of rarity and the spiritual connection that they had, right? So the Earth Nation, by default is very grounded and very kind of you can say secular. Whereas the kind of spiritual center of the Avatar, of this universe, of this world, instead of Planetos, I guess we call it Avataros or whatever. In this universe is the air, all four air temples, right? They're at the north, south, east, and west, right? They're in each direction, and they're the kind of spiritual centers of that direction. And I do think that kind of worried Sozin. He didn't like that they were so revered. He wanted the Fire Nation to be revered and worshipped. And he needed to replace that spiritualism with the emperor as God, which is something I'm going to definitely talk about in my Fire Nation episode of how they represent World War II Japan, because the emperor was God on Earth. And they didn't want the avatar, and especially an air nomad avatar, to represent that instead. But I mean, the genocide itself, we have kind of covered a little bit, and why the Fire Nation was so aggressive. And Christina was kind of bringing up earlier the resurgence of airbenders. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Kind of how do we see? I mean, it literally says the last airbender, right, in the first series. So then in Legend of Korra, in the last season, we get airbenders all of a sudden. And the first time I saw it, I hated it. Second time I saw it, I liked it all right. And I just did a rewatch a couple of weeks ago. I'm still not super into it. So I'll give it to you, panel. Let's talk about that.
I got nothing. I got nothing. I
I
think the
haven't-
writers really, really wanted the air nomads back and didn't care much how it would make sense, and they just sort of made some. To me, it says really like I tried to look into it. I tried to see if there's some kind of. To me, it just seems like they pulled a bunch of spiritual gobbledygook out of their ass because they wanted the air nomads back, and that's fine. Does it kind of devalue the whole genocide thing and the whole? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's nice that they came back. It's nice that they tried to restart that culture and all that stuff. But I'm not a big fan of it. I think, I mean, there was, of course, Aang's kids, so they could have repopulated that way. That it would have taken a lot longer than with this magic, them just coming back. I think it would have made more sense. I don't want to say if I had been the writer, because it's always easy to go after people in hindsight, but. I think it would have made more sense if more non-benders had gotten different bending abilities. So instead of just people suddenly being airbenders, if there had been other people who suddenly became firebenders and earthbenders as well. That to me would have made a little bit more sense, because then it's maybe just like, oh, it unlocked, bending abilities for more people and brought it back that way. Because otherwise, I'd have no idea how you make that work.
I think I mostly agree with you, Yogi, although I will say, like, I can see why it's just the airbenders, because it is a spiritual happening and it's meant to return the balance. So I can forgive it just being airbenders, because there's already a whole lot of fire and earth and water benders. That's not the part that's out of balance. So
that's
the
a good point.
spiritual, like, healing salve is, let's put some more earthbenders out there. We don't care who they really are. It doesn't matter. And I agree also that that's a little bit clunky storytelling on their part, but we're not here to critique, but I think I more or less agree. I don't think there's a whole lot to be mined in this sort of like symbolic representation of all the air nomads coming back, other than it's what they wanted to do.
Yeah, I guess for me, I just wanted more of an explanation or a connection as to like why you would have, I would have seen it as like a latent kind of thing, like you might have been born and it didn't express itself because things were out of whack.
Like a latent X gene in the X-Men.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of saw it as, just because it made sense with Zahir, right? He was drawn to, gosh, what's his name?
Guru Lahima.
Yeah, Lahima.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. So he was, because he was like reciting his poems and stuff throughout. I mean, that's how he knew about the flight and all that, which is so interesting. I just thought it would be people who were just more spiritual, and it seems that way in some cases. Like I said, with Boomy, it makes sense. He has the connection to the spirits, way probably, he's like second to Janora to talking to them and able to, how he sent the one spirit to save her, and he knew something was wrong because this little like, what, Boomju is that he called him?
Yeah, Junior.
Yeah, Boomju. So like he was really connected with the spirits, which made sense to me. The thing that was weird was that there are air acolytes who are people who kept the airbender tradition even though they were non-benders. And Pema, Tenzin's wife, is an air acolyte, which to me makes sense why they had all airbending kids, because you'd think Aang would have all airbending kids, but no, he was with a waterbender, so they had one airbender, one waterbender, and one non-bender. And so then Tenzin marries Pema, and then they have four airbender children. And that makes sense to me because she's an air acolyte, but I guess it doesn't make sense to me that, like, as far as we know, no air acolytes got airbending, which is like, who is gonna, if you were gonna give airbending to anybody,
I got given years of my life to these.
Yeah, but but doesn't Tenzin just tell him to clean up the air temples? We got we got new air nomads coming in. You guys can like clean the temples for us.
To me, that kind of show that airbending isn't, maybe being an airbender makes you spiritual and not the other way around. And maybe it's not being spiritual that makes you an airbender necessarily, because some of them were, like you say, Zahir and Boomy both were more spiritual, but clearly not all of the air nomads were. And those people that were following the spiritual tenets set down by the air nomads pre-genocide, as you say, none of them became airbenders. So I kind of feel like that bending ability isn't tied to being spiritual. And maybe that it's a reflection of the way firebending works. It's from the breath, except it's not when you're filled with rage and hatred and loathing for another people group. That can fuel your firebending as well. So it might not, you could argue in season 1 that firebender, to be a good firebender, you have to be really angry all the time. But clearly we know by the end of the series that that's not the case. Mm-hmm. So maybe it is the case that you don't need to be all that spiritual to be an airbender, but being spiritual can make you a powerful airbender. The way that the rage and loathing that people like Zuko had early in the series and his father had throughout the whole series, and Azula, they're really big negative emotions made them powerful.
I also think I want to think that it's random too, because looking at Zahir has the poem by Guru Lahima, which I have stared at and translated. They do translate it in the show, but because it has a lot of and for those listening that don't know, I'm working on my PhD in Chinese studies, so I can read Chinese. And they use something that I talk about in my essay that I'm going to read later, is they use these things like ru kong to enter the void and shu to be empty. And he's perverting these originally Buddhist ideas that are used by the Air Nation. And so I think his perversion of it actually doesn't make him spiritual. He's unlocked some spiritual powers, but he has done so with impurity. And I think, for example, when his girlfriend dies and he's like, oh yay, now I have no attachments. I mean, that's not what the air nomads or what Buddhists are going for at all. It's not stop loving people and don't care if they die. That's so I feel like his perversion of it is actually a perversion of the spirituality, which is why I have to think that it was random, because if it was based on pure spirituality, he wouldn't have gotten the airbending powers. But that's my take on it, just because I feel like the pure freedom and pure non-attachment that the air nomads represent and that Guru Lahima represented were completely taken out of context and used to justify anarchy by Zahir.
Oh
Okay,
yeah, and another example of someone who got the air bending was Kai, right? That kid, the thief.
Yeah.
The thief kid. Yeah.
Aladdin. Yeah, where was his
Yeah.
monkey? I think that I kind of wonder though, because Kai did turn out to be a good kid. He just needed something to hold on to, and that was air bending. Like he
Yeah.
did become a better person because of finding a community. So
Mhm.
I kind of wonder also if these people who all got it were people that just needed. A lot of them needed community. There was the kid who was in his mom's basement who didn't do anything. There was the guy
Yeah.
who he was like, "I'm going to stay here with my family," but he didn't seem like he was particularly happy. He was like, I got to run the farm. People that were kind of looking for something bigger in life seem to be the ones who got it. Steven's got a point, I can tell.
I just had a thought about the way that they implemented the return of airbending powers is another way that they are using multiculturalism to tell their story. People are coming from all different walks of life, are coming together to form this new community, which is something that they've been doing with the show since the start. So that might be a good reason why it was so random, so that there wasn't a predominant existing cultural point of view for them to come from to begin with, and they could come together and build a new culture that grew out of all the components of the people there. Yes, Tenzin was there to help guide them, but all of these people didn't become air monks and sort of take on the old way of the air nomads.
Yeah, it's kind of a modern take on it, right? They do take some of the teachings, but not necessarily the full on lifestyle. We also have Suin Beifeng's daughter, who if I remember right, all of her brothers could earthbend, but she was a non-bender. So once again, someone who was kind of a little bit on the outside as well, a little bit, on the periphery and within their family. So I do kind of see something similar with all of these characters, but it probably is just me trying to find a pattern.
I want to. I just really want
I mean,
to.
I would like to go back to your point about Zahir's and his spirituality, because the show kind of implies that he is more spiritual than the average person. They have the scene in season 4 when Korra talks to him in the spirit world, and he seems to have no problem accessing it. And then, of course, you have the moment when he unlocks his floating ability, is the moment when his I don't remember her name.
Please.
His Sparky Boom girlfriend.
Plea. Or wait, her name's Plea.
Plea, that's right.
Yes.
Plea. When she dies, that's the moment when he is able to detach himself quite literally.
Girlfriend, I'm sorry, I can't get over it.
Plea.
And yeah, because we have that same idea of non-attachment is also present in the first show with Aang and Katara. So it is you could argue that is a teaching where they do preach that, the Anomads, that you're not supposed to have these attachments to earthly things, including close, like romantic or personal relationships. So in a way, when he lost all of that, and then him being able to fly, doesn't that kind of prove that that's the angle the air nomads are coming from, or at least that Guru Lahima came from?
Yeah, but I do think that there is a contradiction, which we see in the episode about opening the chakras, where Aang goes, a couple of chakras ago, you told me to keep hold of the ones I love and remember their love, and then now all of a sudden I have to let them go. I think there appears to be a contradiction within the teachings.
Yeah, 3 chakras ago, that was a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so the whole detachment thing that I've been reading about when I've been doing my yoga studying is it's not detaching, it's not caring, it's detaching yourself from the outcome. So you're not, you know, you can love, but like if one day, what is it? Just gosh, I'm trying to think. Like he, so basically when Aang was having that issue with his chakra, and he knew that Katara was in danger, and he couldn't detach himself from the outcome. He had to interfere and go and save her. That was him. That was like the chakra blocking him, not being like, whatever happens, happens. I'm not going to go interfere, you know, or I'm going to go interfere and save Katara. That's him attaching.
Yeah, he had his Empire Strike Back cave moment.
Yes. Well, so
quite literally.
In Buddhist teachings, it's detachment from desires, right? And detachment from greed and lust, right? But you can have a genuine love for someone that is not attached to them as, you know, as a mortal being, basically. So the show is obviously playing off of this Buddhist idea, but it's very murky, and it is in Buddhism as well, even though it's like a central concept. Most Buddhist practitioners, including myself, have a hard time with the idea of detachment because you can take it too far, like I think Zahir does. And so
I guess maybe it's the thing with detaching in the sense that you can love people and stuff, but when you get to the point where you cannot live without them, that's when that's when they consider it to be attached.
Or your love becomes conditional.
Yeah.
Like you were saying earlier, and Zahir is a really excellent representation of this. There's this idea of freedom, which we all want. And then there's this freedom gone too far, which is anarchy. There is detachment, which we should all strive for. But then there's this caustic detachment that we can call, I guess, nihilism.
Yeah.
And which Zahir is also kind of a nihilist. And I think you're right. Like Buddhism is also one of those religions, I think, outsider's perspective, again, atheists, so take it all with a grain of salt, but is Buddhism not one of those religious or spiritual teachings that emphasizes moderation?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Finding the middle path, so to speak.
Yeah, Buddhism is also called the middle path because Siddhartha Gautama, the original Buddha, he came from a rich family full of eating and drinking and extravagance, and then he saw these practitioners who were eating nothing and being so, strict about it, and he said he wanted to start a middle way, which then became Buddhism. So it is about and there are these the 5 mindfulness trainings. The 5th of them is the hardest for me because it is moderation in all things. And I like to drink, I like to eat. I've always had trouble with my weight, right? I like to put everything in my mouth. Overconsumption of sex, overconsumption of aswav content. Like you can apply it to anything. And that's one of it. And that's actually a very central teaching. So definitely Stephen is onto something, and that the air nomads are about moderation, right? And the Fire Nation is the exact opposite of that. They want more power, more land, more subjects, more fear and respect in the form of fear.
I think maybe it's like, speaking about obsession with the Song of Ice and Fire, maybe detachment means you can love all the books, but you should be detached enough to not annoy George R. R. Martin on his Twitter about releasing the next one.
And be mad at him if he's not out with a book.
And be mad
if he,
God forbid, if he were to die or simply not finish it just because he doesn't want to. And you're mad at
Yogi
that?
did it. He put it in perspective. That's exactly what Buddhism will teach you: is love the Song of Ice and Fire. But
be glad for the books that you have. Don't be mad at the ones you don't have.
And suffering is also a part of this in Buddhist teachings. Is that you always ask if your karma, right, your action is causing suffering, preventing suffering, or neutral, and that's how you move forward throughout the world.
So I was just even like, I just had my book out, like reading the Law of Detachment again, because it's more about, you can want things, you can have intentions and desires, But for those to manifest, you have to detach yourself from the outcome. You can make conscious choices that bring you to your goal, but you are detached from like failure, right? Because when you're too invested in something, it breeds fear and insecurity that you won't get it. So when you're detached from, I'm going to, do the steps that I need to do, and that's what I can control. But whatever happens, happens, and that's all I can do. That's detachment. For me, I saw Aang. Aang knew Katara was in danger. He didn't say, well, whatever happens, happens. He's like, I need to do something about this and leave. So that's kind of how I saw that one. But I did want to talk about what happened with Ozai and their final battle, because I kind of have like a theory about it, or Brian and I were talking earlier about it, and we kind of came up with something that we thought fit, but I didn't know if you guys had like what you thought kind of happened there with the lion turtle and the,
I found it really, and I still do
Yeah.
to this day, I find it really interesting timing that a creature that hadn't been seen for thousands of years pops up right when Aang needs him. I know it's spiritual world, hoodoo voodoo, but I'm like, I don't know.
I have
Even
a
as a kid, I was
cynical,
like, just kill the Fire Lord.
I have a cynical and I have a spiritual answer for that question. My cynical answer is that the makers of Avatar weren't allowed to kill anyone in their TV show for little kids. So it's spiritual gobbledygook. They had to make up some thing for him not to die. And then the spiritual explanation probably would be that there is that thing about, being non-violent and all that stuff. And it's actually another thing that I'm not sure if we're going to get into it, but the thing with Avatar Yang Chen, who says that, yes, that the air nomads teach detachment, but the Avatar can never do that because he is bound to the world. And that is also why she kind of told Aang, he has to kill the Fire Lord, because he has to sacrifice his own spiritual purity for the good of the world. So even, I think what kind of makes it work for me that he got a way around it was that even like the air nomad Avatar told him to do it. So it was like this idea that, okay, everyone's telling him to do it. And then it was kind of like the universe stepping in, being like, hey, no, there is actually another way of not killing people, because otherwise the message would have been sometimes you just gotta kill people.
And also that
so
doesn't
it's kind of a good
contradict
message
the
for
guru,
kids,
though, who talked to him about the chakra, where he was like, you are the Avatar, you can't be attached. And then Yang Chun is like, you have to be attached because you serve the world. Weren't they kind of bumping up against each other?
Maybe Guru Patik is just wrong.
I
taking his word on
kind
anything?
of wondered that, because all of the gurus, maybe he is in this long line of gurus, but it has been such a long time. I'm like, Patik, are you like reading scrolls? Where are you getting this?
Yeah.
Who are you? Where did you come from?
So Yang Chen says to protect the world, you have to give up who you are.
Your spiritual needs, yeah.
Yeah, your spiritual, which is that's who Aang is. Like Aang, that's him, like his true self, right? When we talk about it in meditation and Buddhism, your true self is not like your ego is who you're showing to the world. Your ego's your willingness to please everybody, right? Everybody's telling you that to kill Ozai, you have to kill Ozai, you have to do this to save the world. Even Yang Chen is telling him this godly air nomad Avatar is telling him this. Everyone's telling him this, but it's not who he is, right? It's not him being true to Aang. So for me, I think the chakra gets unblocked when he gets zapped by the lightning and he redirects it and doesn't hit Ozai. To me, that's when the chakra gets unblocked, because he, one, stayed true to himself and his ideals, and two, he stayed true to who he was and his ideals, and 2, he said, I will not sacrifice who I am, and I am now detached from the outcome. Like I will die, but I will die not sacrificing who I am to, to win.
And Yang Chun's point about you have to give up your own spiritual needs is actually a direct reference to being a bodhisattva, which is an enlightened being who does not exit the cycle of rebirth but stays and is reborn in the earth so that they can help people, which is the avatar. The Dalai Lama is an example of a bodhisattva, and there are a bajillion others in Buddhist teachings. But so she's telling him, you won't get to achieve the enlightenment that the air nomads taught you about because you are the avatar, which is why I think non-attachment doesn't work for him, because he has to love the world in order to save it, is basically kind of where I see. And he also has to be the bridge between the spiritual realm and the earthly realm. He can't be so up in the air spiritual that he doesn't literally have his feet on the ground in the earthly world.
Well, he can't fly, so I don't think any
Yeah, but doesn't that mean in his end he kind of gets his cake and gets to eat it too, because he doesn't sacrifice his spiritual needs, but he still defeats the Fire Lord? So there's kind of a different way. So I wonder, you could probably talk and think about this for a long time. I'm just curious, like, if we assume that the lion turtles are some kind of higher spiritual power similar to gods in I shouldn't say our world, but the idea that there's this higher being, did they just like look at this situation and were like, okay, I guess we'll tell him about the energy bending. We never told any other avatar about it. But to be fair, like the Fire Nation thing is kind of a unique threat. Like no other avatar, I think, are not that well, read in the lore. I don't think any other avatar ever had to deal with this kind of threat where it was literally like the fate of the world. So maybe the lion turtles were just like, okay, we're gonna get
you could also see the taking away of bending as representative of the middle way of Buddhism, right? Rather than killing, and then rather than just kind of locking him up, but as a bender where he can hurt people still, right? You do a middle way where he can live, but he is not going to be able to do the kind of harm that he can as he uses fire bending.
Well, I thought it was interesting, like how, because, before you jumped off the lion turtle and you got the bending and then you get back on and they take it away. So I like the idea of them being able to like teach the takeaway to somebody. Like, oh yeah, I can like teach you fire bending. Oh, I can teach you how we take it away as well. I thought that was interesting. It was definitely surprising though. And I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was satisfying. It was convenient, but it was also satisfying.
Yeah, in a way they pulled it off well enough to when I was watching it as a kid, even though I didn't get it, I didn't feel like I was cheated out of anything. Like I wasn't a very bloodthirsty kid. I wasn't there like, kill him. It just sort of like, when it happened, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But as I got older and I knew about the background and I realized that obviously it's a kid's show, they can't kill. Well, they killed Jet, but they can't have the main protagonist murder
someone. Oh my god,
someone.
they actually referenced that in the 3rd season when they had the play, and they're like, did they just kill Jet? And they're like, it wasn't really clear. And I was I love when they do that meta commentary.
Yeah, so but they
I'm
couldn't
sorry,
have
Aang has
like
killed people though. Aang has killed people.
You
don't think that wave? You don't think that wave at the end of season
that wasn't
killed
him
anybody?
Though. He was taken over by the spirit of the ocean. He didn't make that.
No.
He didn't actually kill people.
There was a point where there is a war balloon flying along, and Aang cuts the top off of it, and the whole thing falls. Those guys are dead.
Yes, I was gonna say he is
parachute, Steven.
Whatever the air
fire
temple they
jet
went to
land.
with the kid in the flyer, and then those people come with the balloons. Like Aang killed people there.
Yeah, I do think there is a bit of a hole. We found a plot hole in a children's show. Good job, panel. But yeah, no,
I'm just saying that he definitely
true.
killed people, but
yeah, he's not completely nonviolent. And I think that what I find interesting is that the air nomad, whenever it does go around, the cycle of rebirth does go around to the air nomads, they are going to be more, that avatar is automatically going to be more spiritually inclined, but they're also going to have a harder time with the kind of martial aspects of being the avatar. But Aang totally kicked butt and killed people at the same time.
He is, it's like the video games I play. I'm like, no, they're just knocked out. It's a KO. See, I haven't murdered thousands.
It's different like dropping a slime bomb or something on people is different from literally standing there and whoosh, like bringing
Or
an
Toph,
element spiral and crushing the Fire Lord to death.
Toph wrapped in metal and punching a guy so hard he goes flying through the door.
Yeah, he did.
He
That's a
landed
dead
in.
dude.
Yeah. Okay. So but here's my thing about the one. Maybe not. I don't want to say last thing. You can make more points if you want. But like
No,
the thing
Yogi's
is,
shutting it down.
yeah, I'm shutting it down. No, if the people who say it was a Deus ex machina thing and that it was stupid and that he should have killed him, that I disagree with. I don't think it would have been better if Aang had just killed the Fire Lord and then the thing would have been solved. I don't think it would have been because to have that thing where he has this pacifism, and yes, you can say that he's killed people before. One time he was a giant fish monster that was being possessed by the ocean spirit. Other times he was like vaguely doing things that may or may not have killed people, but to like specifically murder a specific person with the goal in mind of killing them is different. Like he came to Ozai to kill him. It wasn't any kind of defense like it was when he was in the air temple defending it from the fire
I think
people.
It would have been I just would have found it more satisfying. I mean, I love the third season. I love the show in general. Not a big fan of the blue sky beam at the end. It's a little dragon turtle ex machina, delivered right there at the end that we haven't really had any build up to. I would have found the end to be more satisfying if Ozai had done something to cripple himself in the fight. He tried to channel too much energy and blew his own hands off or something. Give me that ending. He can't bend anymore. The outcome is kind of the same. And so Aang has.
You would have liked an evil defeats itself, Lord of the Rings kind of approach.
I really would have.
That would have been kind of
like with Azula when because she is so into defeating Katara. Katara is able to trick her with the kind of water that's running under the grate, and then all of a sudden you see her like and flashing around like that's so Azula, and that's perfect. And I think Stephen is right that Ozai could have had a similar ending where his kind of aggression worked against him.
Yeah, but I mean, it's actually when I was a kid and I was watching the first time I watched the show in sequence and I came to the last episode. It was the first time I actually saw the last episode, and I saw the fight between when the moment when Azula does the lightning thing to hit Katara. I thought she was so like weird and crazy and out of balance that she was gonna like zap herself and kill herself. That's how I thought she was gonna go out. And I kind of think that would have been kind of better than just having her be frozen and arrested, but that's also good. So I think we also have to cut the writers some leeway in the fact that they had no choice. They could not have killed Ozai. They weren't allowed. So for what they did with it, I think it's good. I've never had like a problem with it where like I think it's a very satisfying conclusion to the show. Could have been better, yeah. But if he had just killed him, I don't think it would have made it that much better. It's just like, yeah. For like,
what do you then think about Amon being able to do it? Like, I understand the lion turtle giving it to the Avatar because he can trust the Avatar, but then in Korra, there's this guy who could do it with blood bending, and I'm like, wait,
I'm not
people could have done it the whole time. What is happening?
I'm not the biggest Legend of Korra fan in the world for precisely things like the Airbender, gobbledygook, spiritual stuff. The Amon, like because they did that thing that they never did in Avatar, which was they did things for the plot, and they just sort of like didn't bother to explain it because they knew it didn't make sense. So they were like, okay, we have this mystery. The guy, he can stop people from bending through a special type of blood magic. How does he do that? Yeah, I don't know. I assume it's something about blocking the chakras or something that he does, but. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. I think it sort of kind of takes away from the whole lion turtle spirit.
Yeah. Well, isn't there
interference?
There's like the chi blocking, right? That Ty Lee does.
Yeah, maybe it's just a more extreme version of that.
Yeah,
where it's
like
permanent.
Well, since he's a bloodbender, there is this idea in Chinese traditional thought that the blood is the chi because it flows throughout your body. It's the energy that flows. So if he's able to like. Then wouldn't they die if he's blocking the flow of their blood? I have so many questions.
Yeah. Well, oh gosh, I don't even want to add to it, but it's like, how could Korra like give it back? She's like, okay, so I'm gonna give back your wait, what is this one's an earthbender? Okay. Like, I'll give that back. I guess maybe she's like blocking.
Yeah.
It also
That,
didn't make the consequences feel permanent when she was able to just give it back, you know?
Mm,
I
I
know, I
feel
was
like
still
taking
crying,
away is
though.
not the same thing as giving back, you know?
that is a way worse Deus Ex Machina. Aang showing up at the end of the first season and giving Korra her bending back. Because that did come more out of nowhere than the Lion Turtle. Because that one at least was
Well, yeah,
in
it was
another
like
episode.
it was like, okay, are you just gonna have a line and be like, okay, we've got Earthbenders, like number
get your-
32
Get
back.
your bending
Okay.
back, everyone.
Oh my god, it's like waiting at the DMV.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
like
I
everyone
remember.
just got it back. It
Lynn,
just,
you're a
yeah.
metal bender, right? Yeah, okay. I
Maybe,
assume
maybe
it's
they
just...
had to go through some kind of bending physical therapy where they had to relearn it. I
Oh
don't
God,
know.
like the
Probably not.
acupuncture. That's what I was so
Yes.
bored when they were in the metal bending city for so long, and she's getting acupuncture, and I'm just like, oh my God.
I don't want this to turn into a shitting on Legend of Korra stream.
No,
Yeah,
There's a lot of
I
stuff in
really,
Legend of Korra where I'm just
No,
like,
I know, and I think Korra gets to like more shit than she should for a lot of stuff.
I mean,
So
Korra
I'm
as a
actually
character
pro
definitely does.
Korra.
With the show, I can understand when people really don't like it. I understand people who really like it. Like, it's not like it's not good. There's a lot of good in it. It's just
I
it never really
loved-
worked for me.
I'm such
I
a
love the Red
steampunk fan
Lotus.
that I
love
like
the
the
Red
aesthetic.
Lotus.
So
I mean,
yeah, and the Red
the
Lotus,
aesthetic
yeah,
is
the
really good.
Zahir, the Zahir kind of storyline was the best of all 4 seasons.
Yeah.
I like that
Although
one
I
the
did
best
kind of
too.
like the last big bad, who was just a woman who, you know, kind of got a
Kuvira.
little bit imperialist.
That one
Kuvira,
was
yeah.
also good, yeah. The second season is rough. And the
But
first
yeah,
season's hit or miss.
yeah.
I
think
love
I like
the
the
Spirit
aesthetic.
World episode though. The original, Avatar, but it
learning
was
about Avatar
messy.
1. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's kind of
actually,
all over
I'm
the
one
place.
of the minority. I'm in a minority of people. I don't even like those beginnings episodes from season 2. I don't like the origin story for where the Avatar came from and how it works. I wish they would have kept it more vague. I don't like the explanation that they came up with. I don't feel like it needed one. But that's
Once
just
again, it's
Cancel
more
Yogi.
aesthetic for me. The way that in the past with Juan, whenever like the animation of the bending was looked like old scrolls, old Chinese painting with like
It did look pretty
the
cool.
fire looked like clouds in Chinese painting. So I liked the aesthetic of Korra. I thought that the writing was not that great, and I think just the way that they would kind of angle a character and push them down a path got really awkward, and the fact that they like very like, as a queer woman, the last 5 minutes of the last episode being like, hey, there's a queer relationship, not great. We needed build up, obviously.
Yeah,
Not great.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they had their hands tied with Nickelodeon, though.
Oh yeah.
I'll give them that. And also I think that they were kind of that they were just, they had fewer episodes, and then they were only guaranteed, like they didn't know that they would do a next season until they'd already written one. So they were written as like 4 completely like separate seasons. I thought Amon could have lasted, been a villain for more than 1 season. So it was interesting to kind of get like the dichotomy of it, where Avatar was a 3-season, like very planned arc where you had a bunch of episodes. So you could have these kind of like filler-ish episodes, but they were still fun and like character development along with the main ones. Whereas like Korra, you had limited number of episodes per season, and you had to have a beginning and an end for each season, which I thought limited them.
And the filler
lot.
episodes in Last Airbender were always gorgeous. Like the Tales of Ba Sing Se is my favorite episode of season 2, where we see oh my god, I'm gonna tear up thinking about it. But Iroh, celebrating his son's birthday, his posthumously. I just like, why?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. It should be said that for.
No, stop it!
Don't do it, Steven.
Don't do
No,
it.
I think the thing with Legend of Korra is that the studio screwed them over big time, multiple times. Like they wouldn't tell them if they were going to get another season. They would cut their budget last minute. That's the reason for that horrible clip show episode that they did in the final season, because they were just like, hey, by the way, we're going to cut your budget, so you only have enough for 9 instead of 10.
Oh, is that the one where they're like? Is that the one where they were talking to Mako about his relationship?
Oh God.
No,
It
it's
was
like the
where
one where
they're
they
like
have the little
little,
like
where they're little
heads.
circles. They're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Hi, I'm Marco.
Yeah.
Oh God, I
Honest,
hated that.
even though I
yeah.
have to say, the last bit of that episode where it's Varric telling his like distorted version of events,
that was
that
kind of
was really funny. Why didn't they just make that the whole episode?
Julie, do the thing.
Then it would have been
Julie.
similar to the Avatar recap episode, which was genius, which was the one with the Ember Island players.
Yeah.
So
I
if they had
will
just had
say-
Varric like reenact all of it, that would have been I would have been perfectly fine with that. But it was not great. But
They
again,
had
not the
great
writer's fault.
characters, though.
They had
They
their
had
budget
great
cut.
characters. I love Tenzin. I love Bolin.
Yep.
A lot. They're two
Bolin
of
is
my favorite. I
very
love
good.
Don't
Bolin.
forget Pabu, the best little fire fairy in the whole
No.
world.
I love that. I love that he got lava bending, even though
I love that too, even though he couldn't do metal bending. So let's go ahead and talk. Getting
Yes.
back to airbending, let's go ahead and talk about specific airbender characters. Let's go ahead and start with Aang, the alleged last airbender. Alleged. Sorry, you look like you've got something to say, Steven.
Oh, I always got something to say, but like, by all means, anybody else can go first. For the record, I'm the straight white man here. I'm the last one that should be being heard from, so I'll take my turn at the end.
Yogi,
Go for it,
you want to tell us your thoughts about Aang?
Aang?
Yeah.
Oh,
I know it's a big question.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts about Aang. I think he's one of my favorite characters of any TV show ever. I think he's a brilliant protagonist because they balance that naivete with the wisdom really well. Like, he's somehow incredibly childish and impatient and all that, and goofy, but also this like wise. It's really funny, but they never made it seem contradictory, which I really liked. And then another point that I raised earlier, the one that he had friends all over the world, and they're sort of like that he really lived all of the teachings from his culture and stuff, but never like forced them on other people. I think I just think he's a great role model. I think him as a character and Avatar as a whole has contributed to a lot of young people being like really woke and spiritual, because they were just such great, really great examples to live by. And I know I really liked him. I think he has a great arc where he doesn't have to sacrifice like his core beliefs, but he still grows as a person and learns new things. All that stuff. I don't really have anything negative to say, of course. So yeah. That's my opinion.
I kind of like the guilt that he expresses about having been gone for 100 years. Like it's kind of sprinkled throughout all seasons, and especially in season 3 when everyone thinks he's dead again. And I think that the responsibility that's on this kid is just, it's a huge burden. And I think that he really feels that deeply in his soul. And I think to be so young and to have that, Monkiatso said, they made a mistake not telling you until you were 16, right? The difference between 12 and 16 is very big, and yet he is able to take on this responsibility. What do you think about our main protagonist, Christina?
Oh man, you guys said it so beautifully, but I love his arc. I love that. I'm just gonna copy Joggi. He said it perfectly, but I love that I think his spirituality, I love how connected he is with it, and that I love that he had challenges. Like, he was obviously an amazing airbender, but he had so many challenges with the other elements and learning them, and he was in this just monumental situation, but he was able to use his relationships with his friends to learn, to grow, but also stay true to who he was and his culture and what he
I'm afraid we lost Christina, and she was making excellent points.
Yeah. So
but
tragic.
Until she comes back, Steven, did you want to go ahead and give us? She's back. All right.
It's like, hey, it says my internet connection's unstable. I was in the middle of something, but
you're in the middle of
good point,
beautiful
too.
thoughts, and so it's right when it was getting interesting, especially.
I know. It was like, oops, I just froze in the ice cube.
It looked like you were
Sorry.
I couldn't tell you were frozen because you look so thoughtful. I thought you were just really searching for the words.
Yeah, I too. Me too. I thought you were just like
Well,
trying to
Pensive.
gather your thoughts, and I was like, okay, she's taking her time, but it's going to be a really good point.
And so I was like on the edge of my seat. I was like, I think we
Oh,
lost.
Yeah,
sorry.
it's like guitar.
well,
just
he
like,
stayed
whoosh.
true
Free
to who
throws.
he was, and through his friendships, you know, he
Oh no.
Not again.
Not again. Why?
Sorry, listeners. It seems Christina is having difficulty.
I think Zoom agrees with her. in
Zoom is
that
like
I
you.
have said
Okay,
it
you've
all
made a beautiful
perfectly.
point. We're
Yeah.
cutting you off there.
he
Steven, go ahead and.
grew
Oh my
no!
gosh.
Wait, no. Steven,
Oh,
why don't you
Christina.
why don't you give
No, she's
her internet
frozen
some
again
time
already.
to recover?
Well, okay, I'll just throw my thoughts out there then. Yogi and Christina have both made excellent points, and I agree with them 100%. The only thing I would add is that,
You know what? It's fun.
okay, the only thing I would add is that Aang is, as he is written as a chosen one type of character, but because of the way he is portrayed with his personality, his sense of humor, his optimism, he is, and you know, he's a kid and whatnot. He is one of the most relatable chosen one characters ever written. So he comes off beautifully for that reason. A lot of times when you have sort of a show with an ensemble cast, the title character is not the most interesting one. You know, I think of something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I mean, I like the character of Buffy, but the characters around her are more interesting for the most part. Aang, that doesn't happen to Aang in his own show. You know, he's not my favorite character in the whole of the series. That probably belongs to like Toph or Sokka or Zuko, but he's still incredibly fun and relatable and just interesting to watch. So I love that little kid. I really do.
Christina, I think you're back with us. Did you want to finish up your thoughts? Thanks, Steven, for subbing in.
I was gonna say Fire Lord Sozin. I was talking good things about Aang and how he would be how he is remembered as one of the great avatars. And he interrupted my connection, so
It's
I
damn
must
you,
be in the
Fire
Fire
Lord.
Nation.
Yeah, and actually,
it's my little puppy Zuko. He's like, hey,
little
wait a second.
Zooks. He's messing up with
Oh,
your,
little
messing your
Zooks.
Wi-Fi. I do think actually Christina makes a great point about Aang as well, is that Republic City is his legacy. You know, they have that statue of him, and he tried to build something better with his friends, and they even mention in Korra that Zuko became his best friend. So he worked with the Fire Lord of his previous enemy, right, to rebuild something new. And it just takes someone special like Aang to even fathom that that's possible, much less make it happen. And I think that's what's really fascinating about his character to me, is that he is a dreamer, but he is also at times in the show realistic too about what is possible. And I think it kind of takes both to be an inspiring figure. So, Christina, do you have any more thoughts on Aang before we move on to a couple of other characters? Nope, you're good. All right, let's talk about his family, about his kids, Tenzin, and then of course his grandchildren, specifically my girl Janora. I love that girl. When she got her tattoos, that's the one part of Korra that I cry every single time when she gets the tattoos and they're like bending the smoke of the incense, and they call her Master Janora. I'm like, I can't. I'm tearing up. But she
did you even know
it so hard.
Well, did you know that she usurped Aang as the youngest master ever? She was 11
I did not know
and
that.
He was 12. Yeah, I thought
that makes her even more awesome.
Yes.
No, so we
amazing.
have his what I also like about her is that she's kind of a bit of a foil to her dad Tenzin, because he knows all of the teachings and is a good airbender and all of that, but can't quite make it as far as the spiritualism, and then she is kind of what he wanted to become. Essentially, it's like you want your children to be what you wanted to be, kind of, and or be better than you. And I think Janora is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I think the thing about Tenzin that I think is interesting is that he's very much like his father Aang in that he has an immense responsibility from birth that he didn't choose, which for Aang it was being the Avatar and destined to stopping, fire Hitler. And for Tenzin, it's that he is like one of the only airbenders and has to like restart or repopulate that entire culture. This entire imagine being like one of the 4 people in the entire world who are part of this group of people, and to uphold that. So he does know all the spiritual teachings, and he passes it on to his kids and all that. But because of that pressure, he, unlike Aang, who sort of like used his more humorous side and his happy-go-luckiness, and he goofed around a lot, in part to just forget about that responsibility for a couple of minutes. Whereas Tenzin, because he's an adult, he can't really step into that childishness and just forget about this responsibility. So he's a very like humorless, stern person. Just because he never got to figure out his thing when he was a kid. So he just carried it with him when he was an adult. So he's like a less emotionally balanced version of his dad, which is interesting, I think.
We also have to give kudos to Pema. She's actually the one repopulating the culture. She's literally birthing the next generation of airbenders. You go, girl. Man, when she married him, she sure signed up for something. Woo.
Oh my. I know, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel like part of him choosing her was like, oh, probably more, if I'm with Lin, I'm not, like, we could have earthbender children, which wouldn't be good. And also Pema, because her being an air acolyte, like I said earlier, makes me think that you're more apt to have airbending children. And yeah, technically, if Tenzin like really wanted to repopulate, he could have just,
could have been like Garth Greenhand.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't want to say it, but it's so not Tenzin.
I think he wanted a partner that would take this solemn responsibility on with him, and Lin was not that person.
Do air nomads believe in monogamy?
Well, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. Before, they'd meet each other up at the party, and then they'd go, and then, oh, we're pregnant. Well, is it a boy? Is it a girl? Because they had like the collective raising, right, of children.
Yeah, but so
what
technically,
if Tenzin should have been impregnating all those air acolyte women.
What if they have the big love fest? And then,
that's the best way to do it, honestly. Like, if you're gonna
in a way, yeah, just
it's not who Tenzin is.
Yeah, have sex for the cause, Tenzin. Do it for the air nation.
Think of England.
Yeah, well, Milo. I think Milo might. Who knows?
I feel like Milo's. If he turns out to like women, he's gonna be a ladies' man.
Well, if there's any way, now we don't have to worry because the airbenders magically got.
Yeah,
so I guess we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Fix that.
Yeah. I always kind of felt that Tenzin's kids were like, if you took Aang and split him into 3 different people, you'd get those 3. Because like Milo has like the chaotic energy, and Denora is spiritual and perfect and all that. And I don't remember the middle one's name. Iki. And she's just kind of like, I don't know what part of Aang's personality she would necessarily.
She's like his FOMO. She's constantly like, why can't I do this with you? Why can't I do that with you? You know what I'm saying? Like his playfulness to want to ride all of the beasts because he doesn't want to like be left out. That's Iki.
She also reminds me of when they get when her and her siblings get taken by those 2 guys.
Oh my god, that's such a funny
and
scene.
she sasses the people. It's the same way when Aang gets arrested by the Fire Nation in the first episode. And he's like, I could take you both with my hands behind my back. That's kind of like what Iki would probably say.
And when Iki was there, like she was tied up and she was talking to them and like being really nice. And they were like, you know what, Iki, I'm sure you're an important part of the team. And she takes out her arms and she's not bounding more. She's like, you really think so, guys? Like that's so Aang.
It's like when Aang is in prison and he's in that thing.
Yeah, and then he like takes his head out and he's
or when he does that twice. He also does that when they're in the Earth King's palace. Yes. And he has the earth cuffs, and he just goes like, "I'm over here," and he pulls them back on.
The only thing I will say about Tenzin and his children that I haven't, that hasn't already been said is, and again, I'm looking at this through the lens of Dungeons and Dragons. Aang is chaotic good. He's kind of the embodiment of chaotic good in a lot of ways. Tenzin is like lawful good. He has all the same beliefs, but he is so concerned about. Aang follows the tenets, and he follows them like they mean as much to him as anything else. But he doesn't let the sort of meta narrative of I'm a pacifist. Tenzin would be the person that would never fight anything if he chose to latch onto that pacifism aspect. Like, he is an incomplete airbender because of, oh, hold on.
Seems like, yeah, Steven has possibly some fathering to do. Darn, I was really interested in that incomplete airbender point. I think I hope he might be talking about the lack of spiritualism within Tenzin.
Well, yeah, I thought Tenzin had an inability to let go. Like he was attached to outcomes, right? He's attached to rebuilding the air nation. He's attached to his goals. But oh, here we go.
Oh, there, he's back.
Yeah, sorry, my space got invaded unexpectedly. I live in a house with other people. It happens sometimes. I can't even remember what I was saying.
You were saying Tenzin was an incomplete airbender?
Yes, he's an incomplete airbender, and I think you're right, largely because he lacks the spirituality that is associated with it. Like, he's trying to follow the rules of being an airbender, whereas the rules of being an airbender are there to help an airbender achieve that enlightenment, because it leads you to being a person that believes in these things. Whereas Tenzin, and I'm sure he believes in them, but like he is so concerned with the following of the rules, with the doing it this one way, which is actually not a very airbender way of looking at the world. They're always looking for the way around, the path of least resistance, or the which is why Aang had such a hard time with earthbending when he was trying to learn it, because he thinks around his problems. He doesn't think straight through them necessarily until he takes a few lessons from Toph. Tenzin, on the other hand, he thinks things around because he's been taught the rule is you think your way around these things. But I don't know that it's part of his core personality to be that way.
Yeah, and I also wonder if Tenzin thinks about the why of these rules. Like, you just follow them, right? And for me, I find rules much easier to follow if there's a really good reason, like safety, or it would hurt someone's feelings, whatever. Like, a reason that you wouldn't do something or that you should do something. And for me, especially when I was a kid, whenever I asked why and an adult couldn't give me a reason why, I kind of just disregarded it, because I thought it's just because they just don't want me to do this thing, or they do want me to do this thing. If they don't have a reason, then I kind of disregarded it. And I feel like Tenzin would have been that kid who didn't even ask why. He just did it. Or didn't do it.
I like Tenzin a lot because he's a great role model, and he's a great mentor to people. And with Korra, like a mentor / father figure, even, with his kids, he's a great father. He's a great guide, and he's just a good person, and he's got a lot of great advice and wisdom, and his heart's in the right place. But throughout the series, you see him grow and be taken out of his comfort zone so many times, and forced to grow, and forced to, acknowledge, acknowledging that his daughter is the master, even though, she's young and he's her dad, blah blah blah. But like he does grow. He's not, as rigid as he can be. He's not. He will change. He saw Korra in, even in the first season, when he saw Korra was having fun in the whatever, the arena with the fire ferrets.
Oh, the pro bending.
Yeah, with the pro bending, you know, at first he's like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, he's able to adapt.
Also
which
with
I
Boomy,
liked
he
about
kind of
him.
changes the way he sees his brother as
Yeah.
well.
So he does do a lot of growth, which I liked about him, because he started off as still like a great mentor, but he did allow himself, you know, mostly through experience to grow, and how he was able to save was it Janora from the spirit world?
Yeah, Janora was
Yeah,
trapped.
because Janora and Korra went in, and then she was stuck, and then him being able to save her. Oh God, made me want to cry. How did he do that again? He had to go into the fog.
Yeah, the fog of lost souls.
Yeah, so Tenzin's ability to do, I don't, he grew so much.
He's also like that shows him really as a beacon, right?
Yeah.
For people to be drawn to, because he was able to go through the fog of lost souls and find his daughter and save her, because he was able to be this kind of shining light.
If I can get metaphorical for a moment, Tenzin is like that room that is like a room that has been sealed off. There's air inside there, but you know, if you walked into a room that had been sealed for 20 years, you would say that the air in there is stale. And then we also have this sort of concept in our language of a breath of fresh air, being a thing that that will invigorate you. Tenzin starts off as stale air, gets his breath of fresh air in the form of Korra, and he is and as you say, Christina, he grows and changes so much from that, from being forced to get to change up his way of thinking about things, because stale air is still air. It's sitting still. It's not circulating. And the way Tenzin has been so detached, living on Avatar Island, living only with these air acolytes, he is not mixing his air with the air of the rest of the world, and he becomes stale. But through watching Korra interact with the pro bending circuit, and you know, getting back out there and meeting up with like Lin Beifong and all of that, he does sort of like reintegrate, and he becomes a more complete person by not being separated, but by being a part of the larger Republic City culture.
I like that. Yeah, and I think that he also, what's interesting is that, like we were talking about, Aang had this great weight of responsibility, but not only did Tenzin have this responsibility as a father, but also as one of the last airbenders. And then on top of that, he was a part of the Council of Republic City. So he also has this political position that is very important, especially because it seems like the other counselors are kind of yes men. they seem a little bit unthinking. He's really the only one to ever object against something. The others just seem to kind of,
and teaching the Avatar airbending on top of that.
He's got a lot on his plate. So let's go ahead and talk about a little bit about Yang Chun, and then maybe Zahir, and then whatever else you guys want to do as far as closing remarks, and then I'll read my essay and bring you guys back to thank you for coming on the panel. So Christina knows the most about Yang Chun because she's read these novels.
Yes. I think we went through a lot of it already, but I thought it was interesting with her that she was, so in the Kiyoshi novels, it's like,
she said it, drink.
I know it's not, I know I was gonna say I shouldn't drink whenever I say it in the Kiyoshi novels, but it's everybody just idolizes her, especially Kurik's just seen as a failure. So when Kyoshi realizes that she's the Avatar, and even before then, she, like, everybody worships her. So everybody worships I say Yang Chen, but I'm saying it wrong then.
It's technically Yang Chun, but you don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
Sorry.
You can say it like they say it on the show, which is Yang Chen.
Okay. They say it on the show, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's fine. I'm gonna always do the Chinese pronunciation, but my guest can do. You can call
Yeah.
her Sparky
Yeah.
Boom Air Lady. It's fine.
I mean, technically, the
Air
show one is the
Avatar.
correct pronunciation. So,
All right.
You-
So Yang Chen. So what she is best known as she brings a great era.
Wait,
of
I'm sorry.
peace.
Did you say I'm sorry. Did you say Yogi? Did you say the show is the correct pronunciation?
yes.
I
Yang
mean,
Chun is her name. It is Chinese. I'm sorry, I will die
No,
on this
but
hill.
her name
it's
is
not-
they
it's
say
not
in the show
Chinese.
it is like
It's
in
Air
the
Nomad.
world of Avatar. That's how it's pronounced because that's what people call it. That's what she herself pronounces it as. So that's
Yeah,
how
because they
that's
have
how it's
Western
pronounced.
voice actors. I'm sorry, Christina. Go ahead.
That's a different
I will
episode.
mute you,
Next
Yoshi.
episode.
anyway, so she brokers a deal of peace with the spirits, and that's kind of why she's seen as this just kind of, she's like a godly figure. The people in the Earth Nation worship her. They have statues and they go and pray at their statues, and that's a lot of why. And she was also like great PR for the air nomads. She's why that air nomads are seen as good luck, because when Yang Chen comes, like, good things happen to you, and she was able to negotiate with the spirits. And so she ended up leaving a mess for Kuruk because she made a deal with the spirits, essentially saying that she said to the spirits were mad at the people, and she said, well, I'll make sure that my people don't mess up this land, don't take too many resources and pollute this area, and you leave us in peace. And the people, of course, did not do that. And so when Yang Chen died, all of this, the people weren't holding up their end of the bargain, and the spirits were like, well, we've held up our end of the bargain. So that's why the spirits came, and Kuruk was left to deal with this mess, and then he eventually died. So Yang Chen comes to Kyoshi and tells her that, basically just saying, like, yes, I messed up, and that's, you've kind of got to help clean up as well. She also told Kyoshi, so Kyoshi actually took one of the toys, which was, it's like a cute thing. When they did the toy test in the Earth Nation, Kyoshi she was the orphan, and she went in and they didn't think it was her, but she ended up stealing the clay turtle. And so Yang Chen told her to put it back, which was cute. But no, she's an interesting figure. She doesn't ever, she was the only one, I think, who talked to Aang who didn't kind of say anything about what they messed up as, and then she did for Kyoshi. But yeah, she definitely brought a lot of goodwill to the Air Nation and the Air Nomads, and kind of positive PR that lasted for a very long time. But I suppose if you just take the fact that Kyoshi lived for like 200 and something years, that for the Air Nation for the when the genocide happened afterwards, it was, I suppose it was, they must not have worshipped the air nomad, or the air people weren't seen as like good luck anymore. Obviously. But yeah, she's a very interesting character.
I really honestly don't know enough to add anything to that.
I don't know much either. I just always appreciate when we do get the female avatars, with Kyoshi, and then when we do what we do see of Yang Chan in the kind of the lion turtle episode before Aang goes to fight the Fire Lord, he thinks, oh, we talked about this earlier, I'll find an air nomad and they'll tell me that nonviolence is the way. I found her instruction to him to be very thoughtful of him, knowing that he had this was their culture, but also emphasizing his responsibility as the avatar, which is something that I think all avatars have to deal with, that they want to embody their culture, but they also want to understand that they represent all four nations and not just one. And that's something that Iroh, when he was talking to Zuko about trying to get him to learn lightning bending, he was saying that it's illusory, right? It's an illusion that all four are separate. They're actually all together, which is also a very Buddhist concept of the illusion of separation, right? Which is also one of the chakras, the illusion of separation. So I think that Yang Chun kind of understood these higher spiritual aspects, but understood that they did not necessarily apply to her when she was Avatar or to any other Avatar. Yogi, did you have anything to say about Yang Chun?
No, really only also that her one appearance in the show I always found very memorable because her advice was definitely the best out of all of the people that showed up. So, and I always wanted to know as a kid how what female air nomads look like, because my like little 7-year-old brain was like, well, women can't shave their head. They have long, beautiful hair. But then it was like she had like the half. She had like she was like half bald, but also. And I was like, oh, that's it. I finally answered that.
Yeah.
I didn't comprehend all of her spiritual points, I think, when I was a kid, but I remember her just because I was so curious what they looked like.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and then have a Zahir off. Talk about. I saved him for last because he's the most controversial airbending character.
What a jerk!
We did talk about a couple of things
Steven.
Already.
Yeah, we mentioned him, but if there was something about Zahir that we wanted to get into that we didn't earlier.
He's short.
He's
like Wolverine.
He said, when you see him next to Plea, it's funny.
Yeah. His introduction was kind of badass in the series, where he like frees himself and then he goes and frees all his friends, and they're kind of this like ragtag group of.
They were scary. They were scary.
They were. Yeah.
They have the combustion bender, a lava bender, and then now an air.
They were all in these
octopus water bending lady.
Yeah, and they were all in these.
I love the Red Lotus as villains. You know, I love good villains, right?
Yeah.
They were a cool idea. They were like an anti-team Avatar.
And I also love that
how they were all in like these funny like Kung Fu Panda prisons at the beginning of the season.
Oh my god, they were totally in Kung Fu Panda prisons.
I definitely
realize that.
Yeah, and I like Zahir. I think Zahir is interesting because he's like a type of villain where you can really. I think what makes him so good and memorable is that you can really see where he's coming from, and that he's kind of making good points in some way. Like the Earth Queen sucks, and her being gone is probably good. Like there shouldn't be a monarchy. Like I agree, Zahir, go for it.
Yeah, and she's obviously, I say obviously, for anyone that knows Chinese history, she's obviously modeled after the last Empress of China, Cixi, and that she was kind of in her own world and extravagant, and thought that the people, the subjects really owed her, and she didn't really owe them anything. I love how they had Mako and Bolin's grandmother being like, "Oh, I love her so much," being like this worshiping the royalty.
Which is a very real thing too with old ladies in the UK. They love the Queen for some reason. Like when they kill the Queen, when I was older, they kill the Queen, and then they go on the radio, and Zahir's like, "Well, the Queen is dead. You're free now," and they tear down the walls that separate the different classes of Ba Sing Se. I was like, cool. Good. Like I was kind of excited, which is not something that you should usually feel when the villain is like winning. But I mean, the class structure of Ba Sing Se is bullshit, and so is the monarchy. Like they were making some good points. It's just that, and then the other thing with Zahir was that I always found it very fascinating, his opinion on the Avatar is that no one is like better than everyone else, so there shouldn't be anyone who could like. I think it was that just the idea that there would be like one person who's destined to help the world or is better than everyone else. It was kind of like the same idea with getting rid of hierarchies, and that was also, I think, an interesting point.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting with his one, you have to give him credit. That Earth Queen death was insane. Like, I have asthma, so watching that, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, it kind of makes you think, like
that
the
was
world.
messed up, but
The
it
world
was
got really lucky that the nomads are pacifists, because like if you
Yeah.
got like 20 of those guys, you could like choke out an entire village just by
Seriously.
taking all the air
real.
away.
But I don't know. I guess I thought his relationship, when I thought of it through this lens of non-attachment that seems to come up a lot with the airbenders, I was thinking like, okay, well, with the flight, he lost his attachment to his love Plea, and then he was able to fly. And actually, there was a cool moment where the other people of the Red Lotus were like, "What happened to Plea?" And he like fell a little when he was like he like fell because he like thought of her, which was interesting.
Oh, that's an interesting detail.
Yeah, with his non-attachment. And then so I was discussing this with my husband before, and I'm like, well, isn't he attached to this his like isn't he attached to, you know, killing Korra and, you know, killing the leaders of the four nations and abolishing the White Lotus? Like, isn't that attachment? How can he achieve these things? And then so we got into it a little bit, but I think like he sees this you know, anarchy as his purpose or dharma in life, and he'll sacrifice himself. Like that's why there was so much of an issue with Kuvira coming afterwards. It's like, well, you know, you can't just like kill the queen without putting something else in its place.
If you create a power vacuum, something will always.
Exactly. So, and you know, Korra says that to him like in prison. She goes, well, you know, you left all of this, you know, it was chaos after you left. And he's just like, oh yeah, I guess I never thought about it like like that. But I mean, I guess I see him as non-attached. Like his purpose to him was, you know, this anarchy and abolishing, you know, the Avatar, etc. But he wasn't attached to the outcome of it. Like he would sacrifice himself if it meant like achieving this goal, which is why I think that he was able to fly. And also he was just really good. He was great at spiritual projection as well, which is another, you know, airbender talent, like Jinora. I would say he's second to Jinora at spiritual projection. But yes, that's my Zahir. Interesting villain.
See, Stephen, you looked like you had something to say, but
not really.
No,
I
not
mean,
really.
to be honest with you, like I've seen Korra, but the original series Avatar is where my heart really lies. So I am not. I mean, of course I know who Zahir is and all of that, but I've seen him, but I haven't revisited it over and over again the way I have with the other series. So I just don't know that I have much to say that's going to add to anything that you and Christina and Yogi have already said.
Cool. Yeah. So let's go ahead and go into closing thoughts. And then I'm gonna actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to read this essay and then we'll go into closing thoughts. And then everyone will once again let you know where you can find them. So I will bring the panel back after reading this. It's a real quick one. You'll be able to find this on my blog if you want to read it for yourself, but I'm going to narrate it for you now in my beautiful voice. So I wrote an essay about the cultural influences in the Air Nation. So let me just zoom in a little bit. Okay. So, the Air Nation and airbending is an important part of Avatar The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. While we see a resurgence of the Air Nation and Korra, when Avatar Aang emerges from the ice, he is the last of a dying race, his people having been wiped out while he was frozen for 100 years. The Air Nation, like all four nations in the main series, has many influences from Asian cultures, but in particular Hinduism, Buddhism, and Tibetan monastic tradition. Before getting into the Air Nation itself, it is worth noting that the cultural influences of the title Avatar. The term avatar comes from avatara, which is a Hindu concept. Avatars are incarnations of gods so that they can come to the human world and affect mortal affairs. One of the most popular of these is Krishna, who is the avatar of Vishnu. Krishna is famous for his role in the text Bhagavad Gita, where he acts as the chariot driver of a warrior named Arjuna and teaches him about important Hindu concepts, especially the three margas or the three paths. As I have detailed in my episode on Chinese writing in Avatar The Last Airbender, which you can find in written, video, and audio form, the Chinese term for avatar that is used in the opening title of the show means a magical power that's descended to Earth. Both of these terms show the influence of this Hindu concept of the avatara. So, the monastic lives of those in the air temple is modeled after Tibetan Buddhist monks in multiple aspects: vegetarianism and dress, shaving of the head, detachment from earthly needs, enlightenment, meditation, reincarnation, and spiritualism, which is a lot of what we've talked about with the panel. Aang keeps with his vegetarian diet, and we see this reflected in his son Tenzin and his grandchildren on Air Temple Island in Republic City in Legend of Korra. While it is not necessary to eat vegetarian as a Buddhist practitioner, Buddhist monks and nuns observe vegetarianism as a way of upholding the tenet of respecting all life and causing no harm. Additionally, Tibetan monks wear robes that feature orange and red that are an obvious inspiration for the Air Nation monk robes. The organization of the temple is also reminiscent of Hindu and Buddhist traditions. Air nomad acolytes learn from teachers called a guru, which is a Sanskrit word, who teach them about the monk lifestyle and all of the spiritual teachings. We see that students can also have a very close relationship with their guru, as embodied by Avatar Aang and Monk Gyatso. Names of the characters are also influenced by Tibetan tradition, as Tenzin Gyatso is the name of the current Dalai Lama, and his name has been split to name Aang's son Tenzin and his teacher Gyatso. Shaving of the head is a sign of being detached from vanity, and as described by Tenzin and Korra, it also helps airbenders to feel possible sneak attacks. Detachment and emptiness are two central Buddhist concepts that we see embodied in the airbender monk lifestyle. Buddhist monks and nuns recognize that all experiences and phenomena are empty and therefore work to detach themselves from earthly desires. Part of this transcendence is for the air nomads is being able to fly with an air glider on a bison, becoming weightless like the wind. We see this transcendence to the extreme with the myth of Guru Lahima that inspires Zahir in season 3 of Korra. The talisman that Zahir reads to Lahima contains multiple Chinese characters important to Buddhism, including becoming empty, or Xu, and entering the void, Ru Kong. When this is achieved, the airbender is able to gain the power of flight without an air glider. When Iroh is explaining the four elements to Zuko, he specifically mentions that air is the element of freedom because the air nomads free themselves from earthly wants. But detachment does not necessarily mean that their life is unhappy. As we see with the Dalai Lama, he focuses on happiness and joy that comes from detachment because it puts an end to suffering. In Buddhist and Hindu teachings, detachment from desire and crushing illusion leads the practitioner closer to enlightenment. Called nirvana in Buddhism and moksha in Hinduism, the achievement of enlightenment allows one to escape the vicious cycle of birth and rebirth, known as samsara. The vehicle to recognize these truths is through meditation. Aang even says Om as he meditates, which is a sacred symbol that is chanted in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. The practice of meditation is inherently connected with the airbender monk lifestyle and is often used by the avatar to connect with their past lives and enter the spirit realm. The avatar's reincarnation is obviously inspired by Buddhism and Hinduism, and the avatar is being reborn to help people is also reminiscent of the Dalai Lama and other bodhisattvas who have achieved enlightenment and could enter nirvana but instead choose to be reincarnated over and over to help others. Spiritualism and connection to the spirit realm is an inherent part of the Air Nation monastic practice and is essential to the life of the Avatar. One interesting distinction between Avatar Aang and Avatar Korra is that Aang is naturally spiritually inclined but struggles with bending, particularly fire and earth bending, whereas Korra finds bending easy but the spiritual aspects of being the Avatar difficult. We also learn from the legend of Korra that the Avatar gained their power by becoming one with the spirit named Rava, literally becoming the bridge between the mortal and spirit realms. Throughout both shows, the Avatar interacts with spirits and calms them down if they have been harmed by humans. The spiritual world of Hinduism and Buddhism is vast, filled with gods and hungry ghosts, but those who are able to transcend the mortal realm can cross the barrier from one realm to the other. This is just a brief discussion of the Buddhist, Tibetan, and Hindu cultural influences on the Air Nation. It is obvious that the show creators and writers were inspired by these cultural and religious traditions, especially the monastic tradition. While the series can be seen as a kind of Asian fusion, it does get a lot of details right, and in many ways, the Air Nation and the characters such as Monk Gyatso embody the feel and the spirit of these traditions. So that is the very short essay write-up that I did, which you can find on my blog. So I'm going to go ahead and bring back the panel and have them give me their final thoughts. Panel, there they are. And Christina has little Zuko, her cute doggy, on her lap. Hello, Zooks. Yogi, let's go ahead and I know it's hard because there's a dog on the screen to even
I would
focus.
just like to say that that name is amazing because that spot on his face looks exactly like Zuko's scar.
Yes, and those of you that are
Yes,
listening in podcast
perfect.
form, you need to watch the YouTube video because we can see that he has brown on one side of his face, just like Zuko's scar.
I hope the origin of that spot is not as traumatic as Zuko's scar, though.
Did your husband defeat him in Nagni Kai?
He does kind of look like he's having Nam flashbacks right now.
I know. Okay. No, he's just a wiggly puppy.
Okay, well,
So,
I mean, oh, sorry.
okay, we're gonna say goodbye to Zuko. He's like, what? This isn't a Fire Nation episode. Get me out of here.
Hi, Zuko. So Yogi,
Bye,
go ahead and give
Zooks.
us your closing thoughts on anything Air Nation or airbending.
Closing thoughts. Okay. I mean, I definitely agree with all the points in your essay. I think the Air Nation is my favorite nation. I think I didn't mention that before. So to close it off, I like them the best because I really like their powers are kind of cool, and it's more about it's more the spiritual aspect of it. And Aang is my favorite character in the show, which is not that popular of an opinion. Most people go for Zuko or Toph or something, but
Iroh's my favorite.
Oh, Iroh is a good one too, yeah. But it's just yeah, so it's so interesting, and I think Legend of Korra, think of it was what you will, added onto that by partly bringing back the air nomad, so we get to explore more of the teachings in practice, but also introducing an nomad villain, which I thought was a brilliant move because it highlighted the downsides of those teachings that we also touched on, the idea of how does the detachment work, what is the ultimate consequence of this idea of freedom that they have. So highlighting that with a villain character, I thought was really good on the writer's part, and just overall a great thing for children to watch, a great culture with great teachings and cool tattoos. What more can you say? I love them.
Yogi, he loves them. Christina, how about your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not, if I had to go into like which nation I talk about the most, it might be like Earth or Fire, but at the same time, I've personally been doing a lot of, I probably mentioned it, but I'm getting into like the spiritual aspect of my yoga practice because for mental health reasons, just trying to, have a clearer mind and, more attentive life. So as I've been doing that, it's been really interesting seeing it applied to different works of fiction that I like. This one is an excellent example, and just like you pointed out in your essay, all of those relations back to Buddhism and the teachings and everything like that is really, I love when it shows up in fiction, and it's helping me in my own personal journey, being like, oh yes, that's what they meant, like when Aang's chakra was blocked. And I'm thinking about that, thinking about the meditation, and I see it a lot in Star Wars too with the Jedi. As I've been getting into that, I've just finished Rebels, and so it's been really, oh my gosh, sorry, Zuko just broke in. So it's been really enlightening to me, and I think that the teachings are really good, especially for kids, like to teach kids these nonviolent ways and meditation and just the peaceful peaceful. I know he's so cute.
He's got his little butt in the camera. I love it.
I think it's a great. I thought it was a great choice for Nickelodeon. I hope that they're able to adapt some of the comics and some of the other characters in this world, like Kyoshi. I would love to see an animated adaptation of that, and just overall a really positive show that can teach people how to live more peaceful lives.
I love the Zuko cameos. Stephen, what would you like to leave us with?
They've your other guests have already said it beautifully, but I will just add my favorite character, probably Toph. I love the Earth Kingdom. It's like, you know, to be a fan of the show, I love the Earth Kingdom. But Steven is an air nomad from a philosophical point of view. I consider myself an airbender, air nomad, what have you. Um, I love this idea of personal freedom coupled with communal responsibility and care that they have. You know, each individual is free to do as they will, but they're always working towards the betterment of the group. So I guess I consider myself like an air nomad of the monk Gyatso variety. You know, he's a middle-aged man who likes to crack wise, and is very dedicated to passing on his wisdom and knowledge to the next generation, which is an admirable thing. Um, I love this show in general. I love the complex ideas that they explored with it. But as far as like the Air Nation itself, it's very rare that you get a pacifist main character in a story about with a lot of action and high fantasy elements, and it's done so beautifully and it's done so relatably. And I think this show in general and its primary protagonist in Aang in particular have changed the way millennials and Generation Z view the world. I think it has had a huge effect on the zeitgeist of the younger generations that have grown up with it their whole lives in a way that no other piece of media I have seen has ever impacted the ongoing culture in that way. Nothing from my childhood changed the way we all thought about the world we lived in. But I really feel like Avatar: The Last Airbender has done that. And a lot of that is down to the way that they portrayed Aang and airbenders and the airbending philosophy in general.
Awesome. Thank you so much to the panel. Once again, you can find Yogi at his channel/podcast through the Moon Door, Stephen over at Here Be Dragons, and the lovely Christina over at Lip Bringers. And once again, I will have all of those links in the description. And I could not have done it without these great panelists and with the cute little baby Zuko. So there he is making one more appearance. Hello, what a sweetie. I know he can't hear me because of the headphones, but I'm still going to talk to him. But thank you so much for all of those who are listening. Once again, I have a lot of content coming up. Please follow me on Twitter. There is a little icon in the bottom right of this video that is me. And if you click that, you will be subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you're listening in podcast form, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. That would be awesome. And leave me a good review. And I will see you next time. Thank you once again to my great panelists.